8.4 was all about multiplying a whole number times a mixed number. Let's take a look at one. What's tricky about multiplying a whole number times a mixed number isn't the process of getting to our answer, it's because there's so many steps that we have to remember in order to get to our answer. Here's the first problem we're going to look at. 3 times 2 3/5. Now, there are two different ways that we can solve this problem. I'm going to show you one way, and then we'll go back and we'll do it the other way. The first way is by following 4 steps. Step number 1 is for us to take our mixed number here and turn it into a fraction greater than 1, or an improper fraction. So I'm going to start with 2 3/5. And now I can do this 2 separate ways. I can think about what I talked about in class and what I learned last chapter about my wholes and my fractions and what they mean. I know that my 2 wholes are in front of my 3/5, and that 1 whole is equal to 5/5. So if I have 2 of them, then I have to add 5/5 plus 5/5 plus my fraction of 3/5 in order to get my new fraction. I also know that I can solve it a different way. My denominator is going to stay the same. Now, in order to find my numerator, what I'm going to do is multiply 2 times 5, and 2 times 5 is 10. And then I'm going to add my numerator to that. Add 3 more. That's going to become my new numerator, 13. If I take a look at the bottom, I'm going to get the same answer this way. My denominator stays the same. 5 plus 5 is 10, plus 3 more is 13. Either way I do this, I get 13/5. So that's step number 1. I could either take my whole number, multiply it times my denominator, and then add my numerator to get my new numerator. My denominator stays the same. Or I can pull out my wholes, pull out the fraction, and add all of those together. Step number 2 is now for me to multiply my whole number times my fraction. So this is step number 2. Now when I'm multiplying a whole number times a fraction, all I have to do is multiply my whole number times my numerator. 3 times 13. If you can't do that in your head, do it off to the side. 3 times 3 is 9. 3 times 1 is 3. So my new answer, or my next stepped answer, is 35/5. But we all know that we can't leave a fraction like that. We can't leave an improper fraction as an improper fraction, especially if it asks us to turn it back into a mixed number, which is exactly what we have to do. So that's step number 3. In order to turn 39/5 back into a mixed number, we're going to divide. So now we have to think to ourselves, how many times does 5 go into 39? 5 goes into 39 7 times. 5 times 7 is 35. I subtract, and I have a remainder of 4. My final step, step number 4, is to now change my answer here back into a mixed number. My quotient, which is 7, becomes my whole number. My remainder of 4 becomes my numerator, and my denominator, that was back here as my denominator, or my divisor, either one, they're going to be the same, is going to be my new denominator. Again, my denominator is going to be the same as it was at the beginning. The beginning, I had 2 3/5. Again, I have 5 down here. My denominator doesn't change throughout the entire process. So here is my new answer, 7 4/5. Now, I said you could do this 2 separate ways, so let's take a look at the second way, and we're going to get the same answer this way as well. We can start again with 3 times 2 3/5. Now this way we use the distributive property in order to solve. So we're going to multiply 3 times 2 together, and then we're going to add 3 times 3/5. We broke apart 2 3/5 into 3 times 2 and 3 times 3/5. Okay? We can solve this way. 3 times 2 is 6 plus 3 times 3/5. Now I have a whole number and a fraction. 3 times 3 is 9. My denominator stays the same. Now I can't add these two yet because I have a fraction and I have a whole number and those don't correlate. So what I have to do is I have to change my fraction into a mixed number and then add it to my whole number. So I'm going to change 9/5 into a mixed number. I can divide. How many times does 5 go into 9? Well, it goes in one time. I subtract and I'm left with 4, which is my remainder. My 1, my divisor, or my quotient becomes my whole number, my remainder is my numerator, and my denominator stays the same. Or I can think about my wholes that I can pull out. If I have 9/5, I have 1 whole of 5/5 plus 4/5. That is equal to 1 whole, so I have 1 4/5. Okay, so regardless of how I do it, I get the same mixed number, 1 4/5 here. I then need to rewrite 6 plus 1 4/5. And when I do that, I have to add my two whole numbers together, 6 plus 1, and I get 7 4/5. Okay? Either way, you get the same answer. This way, you're using the distributive property. Back over here, you have to first convert your mixed number to a fraction, multiply, and then divide. Again, either way you get the same answer. It doesn't matter how you do it. Let's take a look at another problem. Okay, here's the next problem that we're going to take a look at. I'm going to follow the steps that I did the first time. So I'm going to first take my mixed number here and convert it to a fraction, 3 3/4. I'm going to multiply and then add. So my denominator stays the same. 3 times 4 is 12, plus 3 more is 15/4. Okay, that's step number 1. Step number 2 is to rewrite and then multiply. So 5 times 15/4. And when I multiply, I'm going to multiply my whole number times my numerator, and my denominator is going to stay the same. Okay, I might do it off to the side if I can't do that in my head. 5 times 5 is 25. I've put my 5, carry my 2. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 2 more is 7. 75/4. My final step, step number 3, is to divide. How many times does 4 go into 75? 4 goes into 7 one time. 4 times 1 is 4. I subtract, and I have 3, and I bring down my 5. 4 goes into 35 8 times. 32. I subtract, and I'm left with a remainder of 3. Now, final step, now that I have divided, is to rewrite this as a mixed number. So, my quotient becomes my whole number. My remainder becomes my numerator. And my denominator is my divisor, or it stays the same from what I did before. And that is my answer. Now, I could have solved this the other way as well. 5 times 3 3/4. Using the distributive property, 5 times 3 plus 5 times 3/4. 5 times 3 is 15. 5 times 3/4, I take my whole number, multiply it times my numerator, and I get 15/4. These I'm going to add, but first I need to change my fraction into a mixed number, so I'm going to divide. 4 goes into 15 3 times. 4 times 3 is 12. I subtract, and I have a remainder of 3. So I need to change this into a mixed number. I'm going to rewrite 15 plus my quotient, becomes my whole number. My remainder is my numerator, and my denominator stays the same. Now I can add 15 plus 3, and I get 18 3/4. So either way you do it, you get the same answer. You can choose which way works best for you. Alright, so go back and rewatch this video if you forget the steps. Again, step number 1, depending on which way you're doing it. If you're going to solve it This way, step number 1 is right here. You turn that mixed number into a fraction. Step number 2, multiply your whole number times your new fraction. Step number 3 is to divide. And finally, step number 4 is to rewrite as that mixed number. If you're solving it this way, step number 1 is to write it using the distributive property. This is step number 2 right here, to actually multiply. Step number 3 is to take that improper fraction, divide, and turn it into a mixed number, which happened right here. And finally, you have to add all those steps together. Alrighty, good luck, and we'll talk soon.